I'm Christian Daytalk, reporting from the abandoned Biden convention here in Chicago. It's running opposite the DNC just down the street. And I'm joined by independent candidate for president, Dr. Cornell West. Dr. West, I appreciate the time. I want to ask you first and foremost, obviously you have your own presidential bid, but why is it important for abandoned Biden to be here, given it's a sort of crowning moment for Vice President Harris?
Well, you see, when you're talking about genocide, you're talking about ethnic cleansing, you're talking about apartheid, it goes far beyond politics. You're talking about something moral, you're talking about something spiritual. You're talking about what it means to be a decent human being, to be in solidarity with a precious people who are suffering in an undeserved manner, suffering in an unjustified, unwarranted manner. And so in that sense, it's just a matter of being witness, bearing witness, and being a witness, let me say. It would be true whether there was an election or not. It would be true whether there's a convention or not. We have to be
that's what we need to start doing, taking care of the business of the country, and not in a political way, not in an election sense, but in a real way. Suffering, human suffering, unfairness, unequalness, racism, it need to come to an end, and we all need to work at it instead of using these eloquent speakers to divert us and guide us away from it. If Kamala Harris is what I think she is, just self-serving, then we're not going to get anything out of her at all.
We have to be in solidarity with our precious Palestinian brothers and sisters and let them know we love them. We are in solidarity with them. We stand with them and will be faithful unto death. That's the kind of human beings we want to be, not just individually, but in community and in solidarity.
You've been a fan of Vice President Harris throughout her career. Do you believe that she might be more open to the positions?
I don't remember Cornell West ever being a fan of Kamala Harris. And sometimes you got to check these news reporters because they just say anything. You're sitting there with a mic in your face and it might get by you or whatever. I hope this don't, because Cornell has never, and he has given several interviews and talked openly about Kamala Harris, and I don't ever remember him being a supporter of hers.
Demands, requests, whatever you want to call it, of not only the abandoned Biden movement, but the pro-ceasefire protesters and activists across the country.
No, I've never been a fan of Sister Harris at all. I grew up in California. She was a top cop in California. She had various policies that
never been a fan.
Criminalized a number of precious folk that I was always against in that regard. But she's been a centrist and a moderate in the Democratic Party, and I've always been a strong critic of any kind of policies that were criminalizing poor people, criminalizing mothers, and so on. And I think at the moment she might be using some language that generates a different tone, but there had.
He's absolutely right. She's using different language. Her position on the policies that they have given her hasn't changed, but her tone has. She's saying all kind of different kind of stuff that makes you look at her a different way. And it's fluff. She needs to start getting down to the, we are way too close to this election for her to be delaying and stalling if she wants to solidify these votes. How can you go to swing states and give speeches that are on no policy at all, but expect these people to vote for you? It's impossible.
To be a fundamental shift in policy. You know, you got to say, one, it is a genocide. Two, we're going to quit funding a genocide. We're going to end the occupation. We're going to treat Palestinians with dignity and come up with ways in which their self-determination can be manifest. I mean, that's the starting point of a serious conversation with me, very much so.
There is an argument to be made that if progressive voters do not vote for Harris, then former President Trump will likely win the election. Would you view his Israel-Palestine policies as better or worse than the current administration?
Oh no, man. Trump's a gangster. He's been a neo-fascist for a long time, and so there's no way that his policies would be in any way better than that of the militarists in the Democratic Party, even though they both in the end up with fascist.
I totally agree. There are certain things that the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are in lockstep on, and foreign affairs in general, as far as attacking other countries or getting in proxy wars, yeah, they're in lockstep there. I think they're pretty evenly yoked. But racism, they're evenly yoked. Those are the things that I look at that they just pretty much on the same page with. But then there's other little policies that they really cry and whine about. But the things that really separate them are minuscule. They're more alike than they are different. Boy, are they.
Effects on people in so many contexts. But no, I think in the end, we just have to be truth tellers and justice seekers. And if they're not going to come to terms with mass incarceration, poverty, wealth inequality, and genocide, and both parties are wedded to those policies, then we have to come up with ways of generating alternatives. It's like in the 1850s, the choice between a liberal slaveholder and a conservative slaveholder. No, we're abolitionists, said Frederick Douglass. We want to abolish slavery. Well, you got to vote for one because of these strategies and tactics? No, we're going to fight to fundamentally transform slavery. You know, we don't want liberal versions of slave plantations versus conservative versions. In some ways, the Republican Party is a certain kind of plantation. You see all of the overlords and the collaborators. And the Democratic Party is a kind of a plantation, too.
I want to add.
I've always used that analogy myself. I mean, and it just seems like, and I don't know about a plantation, that might be a bit strong, but I do see so many similarities in the parties, and yet they get up there and they talk about it. Like Donald Trump, look at the impact he's had on our political system. The way we campaign now, as opposed to just in 2016. In 2016, Hillary wasn't ready for that. He was walking around the stage during the debate, kind of intimidating. He's a big dude. He's up there straight. It made him comfortable. Had they put him in an area that he wouldn't have been able to do that, probably been a little more difficult for him. But he was able to kind of have it his way, and it's changed. The DNC this year. When have we ever had a DNC where they obliterated the candidate the way this DNC did? Usually we're more into our policies and our programs and what we got going on, even though some of it's not even true, even though it's a bunch of lies usually. But that's the direction we go. But now we're not. We decided that what Trump does is effective. And the reason I know that is because we're doing it.
Because, again, you just sort of mentioned this Democratic plantation that the party is right now.
Yes.
Yourself, Jill Stein, I would even throw Robert Kennedy Jr. in this regard, people trying to upend the current system. Do you think the Harris campaign fears you as a political adversary?
And that includes Sister Claudia, the Cruz, and others. We have the socialist parties. There's a number of comrades out there doing some wonderful things. I think there's a certain fear. I mean, there's been an attempt for them to reach out to me.
About working in the administration, about backing your candidacy?
Absolutely.
Kamala's campaign, I'd heard about that too about a week ago. They were reaching out to Cornell about joining her campaign and giving him a position in a cabinet seat or something. He'd probably be like an ambassador to some South American country or something, but just to appease him. But he knows too much. He's too outspoken and he's too valuable to just be pushed in a closet somewhere. His ideas and his talking points and his beliefs need to be brought into the Democratic Party and discussed seriously, and not by the staunch Democrats who are running the party and refusing to relinquish the power. That's why we got all those old people walking around smelling like being gay. They need to retire. They gotta go.
Would you work in a Harris administration?
Oh, no.
Well, what better place to enact change on a system than from the inside?
You can't fundamentally change the system on the inside if you want something crucial like genocide. So with genocide, you got to have a social movement on the outside that generate leaders who have a history of being anti-genocide. You can't have leaders who've been tied to genocide most of their career and act as if they're going to make a promise and then try to bring you in, and you get co-opted and you end up selling out, and they turn away from their promise, which they've done.
And they will do that. Have you terminate your campaign, Cornell? Join forces with them? Give you some little seat where you ain't making too much noise, and then anybody from this day forward will look at you as a sellout because they've extinguished you. You will stop fighting and join the duopoly. Keep doing what you're doing, Cornell. People like you, all of you, we need you.
Done all the time. If they can't meet the promise of dealing with poverty and wealth inequality and mass incarceration, which makes us think that one isolated politician who's been tied to genocide all this time is going to do that. No, not at all. Not at all. Now, if you had a wave of new voices and figures who were trying to change the system, then that is a different thing. That is a different thing. But Harris is a tried and true Democratic Party loyalist.
To that point, do you think there are any lawmakers in government at the federal level now, be they independents or Democrats or Republicans, who are in that mold, committed to their ideals, trying to change
Wonderful
the system
question.
from the inside?
Nobody I know of when it comes to genocide.
Wow. We're talking about the whole Congress, and he can't think of one member. I mean, he's like struggling here. Jeez. Where are we, and what happened?
Even my dear brother Bernie Sanders himself, he fails the test. He calls for ceasefire too late. Strong critique of Netanyahu, still too late. But would he call for one, acknowledging genocide and acting as if it's a genocide will be brought to an end, not just a particular set of politicians in Israel. As long as he's tied to the very way in which the Israeli government conceives of its security, that means that Palestinian brothers and sisters are still crushed. It just becomes a liberal version of Zionism. And I can't think of one. Now, Sister Rashida would be one of the few. Sister Corey's gone. Yeah, exactly, yes. From Detroit. She would be one of the few when it comes to genocide. But even she, I would push her on a number of domestic issues, even though I'm a critical supporter of her.
See, I like that. So he'd still push her on some other issues, some of her domestic policies. He probably feels comfortable with her on the genocide or her position on the genocide, but he's letting you know, I'm a critical supporter of hers. I support her, but critically. And I think that's what we all should be, critical supporters. We should support our politicians or the people that we believe in, but not blindly, not like they're celebrities or superstars, but critically support them, investigate them, come up with questions and thoughts and things to ask, and go investigate that part, things that bother you or things that affect your life. It make it a whole lot better around here, I'm telling you, because they're all getting old, and we cannot let them pass this duopoly on to the next generation, or we'll be dealing with another 150 years of this. We got to get them out. They got to go.
Obviously, the protest movement is probably going to be the overriding story of this convention here in Chicago. It might be difficult to enact policy change, but what is a realistic short-term goal that you hope comes out of this week where thousands of people are gathering here in Chicago?
Well, I mean, one is that if you can't create revolution in a deep moral, political, and economic sense, then you create conflict and dissensus within the elites themselves. We saw this in Vietnam. So you bring the power and pressure to bear from below, and you create these fissures and forms of conflict with moral appeals, political pressure that can generate some policy change. But you could say you could change the policy and still reproduce the same corrupt system.
Well, they really kicked the American population's ass, though. I mean, there was a time when people would have more protests, and not to the point of when someone had to be murdered. That's not even a protest. That's hysteria. That's just an emotional reaction to seeing a black man just strangled out right in front of you, or shot or beaten, or however they decide to kill him. You just get to respond to it. But it's so emotional, and then we go out and protest until people start feeling a little better, and then it kind of goes away, and then we turn it over to our politicians, and then they want to name a act or a law after somebody is not going to stop the next man from getting killed. They need to come up with laws and ideas that's going to really stop the killing. But they don't really want to stop the killing because there's some money tied in there. And to stop the killing would mean the money got to stop too. So we got to do better, you guys. The country is in the middle of an election, and we got Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. I don't think you can ask for two more horrible candidates. She's worse than Hillary. She's worse than Hillary. And I'd hated Hillary. But this one here, worse than Hillary. Hillary had more experience governing. Hillary, that's a very dislikable person, though. Goodness gracious. But her versus Kamala is no contest. And I don't think Kamala's going to do as well as Hillary did against Trump. I just don't see it. But the advantage she has is more people are voting against Trump rather than for her. So she might do okay. It's going to be real interesting.
So that was Vietnam. They had the Vietnam syndrome. We're not going to militarily invade. We're going to indirectly invade with military coups and so forth, you see. So that's just become strategic. But that's still a certain kind of victory, but it's just not what we want in the end. And that's why we hit the streets, that's why we tell the truth, and that's why we bear witness no matter what the context and no matter what the chances of immediate victory really are. Because when you love folk, you hate the fact they're being treated unjustly, and you do all that you can to support them. And those of us who have a deep love of Palestinians, it could be a love of Haitians, it could be a love of folks from Sierra Leone, from Ghana, from Congo, or south side of Chicago, or poor whites in Kentucky. We love poor people, we love working people. And we have to be able to tell the truth about their suffering, and we have to be in organizations that bring critique to bear that will fundamentally change the circumstances under which they live so that their dignity flowers and soars like an eagle.
Well, Dr. West, thank you for your time. To everyone at home, you can continue following along with our convention and protest coverage at WashingtonExaminer.com.
All right. Well, that was a good little interview. I enjoyed it. I like to hear Dr. Cornell West talk. He inspires me. He's an inspirational speaker, and what he's saying makes a lot of sense. You won't hear that out of the Democrats or the Republicans, and those are the parties that we're kind of hanging our hats on. But I do believe there's never a better time than right now to start a movement and for people to start educating and talking amongst themselves, and you'll be surprised where this can go. But as long as we continue to follow the Kamala Harrises and the Donald Trumps of the world, we're going to continue to bump heads and argue and fuss and fight with each other. And the next time somebody comes up to you and says something negative about Donald Trump, it doesn't mean that that person's going to vote for Kamala Harris, and vice versa. Sometimes it's just a conversation that needs to be had, and you might leave feeling exactly the way you did coming in, or you might hear something that's transformational and make you think about things a little differently. Not necessarily going from supporting one to the other, but just looking at things a little differently than you are. Because right now I think we're going a little hard, and I've had some conversations that have troubled me because I thought people had a different perspective on what's going on out there than they do. And you have to tolerate that and understand that in order for it to be a positive experience and not a negative one. But, be cool with people. Talk, don't debate, have conversations, and definitely comment, subscribe, and share this video. Find somebody who thinks like you and share it with them. Helps the channel, and it will help you and me. I don't know how to help you, but you share it, and then they might like you better. I'll see you guys at the next one. Bye-bye.